Hello and welcome back to the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robum, joined as always by my co-host, Jacob Hare. And today we're extremely lucky to be joined by rising superstar in the sports broadcasting world, Noah Eagle. Noah, thank you so much for being here today.
Guys, everybody for months who is searching for a way to get Johnson & Johnson, I'm just thrilled to be with Jacob and Jacob. So I appreciate you having me, and we'll have some fun.
For sure, for sure. So, Noah, let's get right into it. You're only 24 years old and you've already achieved so much in your sports broadcasting career. What inspired you to want to go into this field of work, and what's it like to sort of continue to progress in the sports broadcasting world?
Yeah, I think that it was all of really just seeing my dad. I'd say that's the easiest answer to all of that, right? Is my dad has been in the industry since before I was just an idea, when I was still an idea in him and my mom's head. And by the time that I was born, he was established as the Nets announcer and rising then within a couple of years, getting to CBS. And so I was fortunate enough to be around it and see it and live it and get that peek behind the curtain. And I think that anybody who has a good relationship with a parent, as I did, it's easy to be enticed to want to do similar things and want to follow in similar paths. And that's kind of what happened for me. I mean, look, guys, from an early age, I wanted to be a TV dentist. That story's out there. That doesn't exist. I made it up as like a 6-year-old and thought that I was going to somehow create something that doesn't exist. I also realized, do either of you guys like seeing teeth worked on? Like, would you tune in at 12 or 11 a.m. and say, "Wait, hey, there's Dr. Eagle filling a cavity"? Like, that doesn't sound fun. I don't think we can advertise that. So I made the shift, and, sportscasting, it always seemed like the viable option for me. I love sports. I love being around and at the events more than anything else. I would say, if you ask 90% of sportscasters, that's what got them into it. They want to be around. We all realized we couldn't play it. So by the time that realization kicks in, you say, okay, how can I still be involved in some way, shape, or form? And that's me. And what I really liked and realized I liked at a pretty young age from my dad was the people that you're around. You get to be around just all different types of people. So sure, the athletes, both present and past, and now into broadcasting, you get to form relationships with people, but all the other people that work in sports are great. You meet so many different types of people, and I really like that family atmosphere.
So I need to ask, obviously your dad is Ian Eagle, one of the most successful broadcasters. Did he try to push you into broadcasting, or did he kind of take a backseat and let you find your own way into broadcasting?
No, guys, he tried to put me into botany. He was really into plants and thought that I could help grow the earth. No, he didn't push me in anything. He basically let me do whatever I wanted. That was the biggest key, I think, for both my parents, and now same deal with my sister, who's a couple years younger than I am, is whatever is going to just bring happiness. That's what they wanted us to do. And for me, it was being around sports and the performance aspect of this, and not just sports. I love TV, movies, all that stuff. So being around any of this entertainment world was going to make me happy in any capacity. And so if I wasn't going to be on the air, maybe I would have tried to pursue some career in film or something, like not as an actor, I'm saying as like a producer or something like that. Although maybe my acting skills will be good. I don't know. You don't know until you try. And so that's kind of my mentality with all of it. And same with broadcasting too. Try as much as you physically can and see what sticks, see what you like. And that's what I'm following. So no, there was never a push necessarily from him. There was one moment though that was pretty funny when I was looking at schools and everybody just figured it was going to be a foregone conclusion that I would go to Syracuse because the broadcasting department, both my parents, it's where they met. And so it just felt like a foregone conclusion to most. For me, it wasn't. I looked at all different schools, but there was a moment when we were talking it through and my dad said, well, when do you get to Syracuse? And I'm like, what do you mean when I get to Syracuse? What are you trying to say he's like, oh, no, and sure enough, he was right. It was when, not if.
That's funny. So age 22, you get the Clippers play-by-play job for the radio. How did you prepare to get that job? At such a young age, it's rare to see people at such a young age take on such a big position. Was it sort of daunting at first, or was it something that you were ready to tackle right away and something that you've obviously continued to do?
It was that process. I think that the biggest thing for me when I did get the job was realizing that I was going to be doing it alone. I had never done broadcasts on the radio or TV just by myself. And so I had done a ton at Syracuse where, I was doing games from really sophomore year through senior year. And there's a ladder you have to climb when you go to that within that program, really, because it's so competitive. And so I felt like that preparation was absolutely necessary for me. And for anybody who went to Syracuse, they would tell you the same thing. Every experience you get there helps prepare you for the next step in life. So I definitely felt like I'd put in the work, the hours just through those 4 years. I had been staying up late to do projects, whatever it might be. And so that helped to ease a little bit of my nerves. And I honestly have adopted this belief. I don't remember who said it. May have been Kobe. I remember now some of our players with the Clippers have adopted this mentality of essentially just trust your work. Pressure doesn't exist to those who feel like they've put in the proper and necessary amount of work beforehand. If you do so, if you prepare, then there is no pressure to perform because you're going to. You just are. And so for me, that was it. I was going to study as much Clipper history as possible, which I did for weeks. I was going to learn everything about our guys. I was going to talk to as many people within the organization as I possibly could and just fill my head with information so that no matter the situation, I was going to be covered. Maybe I used 30% of it, and that might be high, but I don't care. If I have information ready to me, then I was going to be good. And then the other thing I think I reminded myself was, they hired me for a reason. And so go be me, don't try to be anything else. And that I feel like has helped me a lot through this journey.
So I guess I need to stick with the Clippers. I mean, 2 years ago in the bubble, they had a tough experience blowing that lead to Denver. Doc Rivers was fired, and now he's with our Sixers. But they hired a really good coach, in Tyrone Lue, who I actually wanted the Sixers to hire before we got Doc. So do you believe that the Tyrone Lue experiment is going to bring a championship to LA, or do you believe that they're still a little bit away from winning a championship?
Well, it's hard, obviously, to predict, as we saw this last year with luck, injuries, any of that stuff. Now COVID. And so for us, we got unlucky this year. A lot of people feel strongly that if Kawhi doesn't go down, it was our title to win this season. And
100%.
A lot can be said for Denver if Jamal Murray doesn't go down, the Lakers if AD and LeBron stay healthy, the Nets if they have all three of their big three. And so it's so hard to predict that year to year. But from a coaching perspective, if anybody is still doubting Tyrone Lue after this year, after what just happened in the playoffs, losing Kawhi, winning that series against Utah, taking 2 games and really having a chance to win that series against Phoenix, if you go back and really analyze it, I just don't understand how. He is a brilliant basketball mind. And so I trust him. And just as we trust Doc, I mean, look, Doc is still a championship head coach. You can't take that away from him. And so is Tyrone Lue, won in 2016, coming back from 3-1. So he's been on both sides of it. And I think he's got a wealth of experience as a player. And the thing that I've really noticed with him is how well he relates to the players, the current guys. They all love him. They will all sit down and talk to him for an hour about personal stuff if need be. And that to me is what separates him maybe from other coaches around the league is players are just comfortable with him and he can tell them difficult things. He can have difficult conversations about, hey, we can't play you in this series because of this. And they respect it. And so I think that's been key to the success of this team.
How do you believe that he's been different than Rivers was with LA?
It's tough because I only got to see Doc for the one season. Now I've seen T. Lue for the one season, but it's also a different team. And so he had different personnel to work with. And I think you've got to keep that in the back of your mind. You're swapping out a guy like Montrezl Harrell for Nick Batum. They do very different things on the court. Same with Serge Ibaka versus JaMychal Green. It's a different player, so you're working. And Reggie Jackson had a resurgent year this year. It was a little bit lingering injuries the year prior. But the biggest thing that T. Lue does is he's willing to make difficult decisions no matter what. Whether it be, look, they traded for Rajon Rondo. That's one of his closest friends. They are very outside of basketball close friends. And he benched him when he had to bench him. I mean, that's not an easy choice to make. Same with Patrick Beverley. He pulled him aside and told him exactly why, but he had to bench him for the Dallas series because he was a bad matchup with Luka Doncic. And those are tough decisions. Patrick Beverley's your starting point guard. If you lose him, you could lose the locker room. And I think he does it in such a way where these guys understand where he's coming from. That's what stands out about T. Lue. As for Doc, he's a player's coach. The players love playing for him too. I mean, you ask any of those guys, they know they're going to have one of their best statistical seasons guaranteed. And I think he puts guys at ease. He lets them be them. You know, Lou Williams, his career was essentially over when it came to the Clippers. Doc said, Lou, just be you. Just go out there and score. Go out there. Don't try to think too much. And it was a resurgent, you know, same with Montrez, same with Pat. And so I think they're unique in their own ways, but T. Lue definitely makes some difficult decisions.
And Doc did that this year with Tobias Harris in Philadelphia. He just told him to stop driving to the left and just shoot when he gets the ball. But I need to ask a question. It's a little less serious, but I mean, what is it like to interact with Kawhi Leonard? I've never really heard the guy talk, or I mean, we've heard the laugh in Toronto maybe twice at the championship parade, but I mean, like you're a guy who probably interacts with him. So what is your like interactions been like?
That
was good.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've got a lot of practice with it. I really haven't done it for him. I'm a little scared to do so. I don't think I'm going to do that. Kawhi, look, I think Kawhi is somewhat misunderstood, as you would expect. So is Paul George.
Mhm.
Kawhi's a good dude. He's quiet. He likes his privacy, like many people do. You know, I don't think that's necessarily far-fetched. I think people look at him and say, well, you're this star player. You're a face of a team. You're supposed to be this, this, and this. And he said, I don't really care. He doesn't care what people think. He doesn't care if someone says he should do something a certain way. He's going to do it the way he wants to. So for me, the thing I realized with Kawhi is you don't need to force anything. And it's really true with all the players. And this is advice I'd give to anybody who's starting out around a team or a league. Joe Davis with the Dodgers once said it, and he's right. You want to be seen but not heard. And so for me, I was sitting around the practices and the shoot arounds and all that stuff. I wasn't bothering anyone. I was just around, and I was around the team. I was on the trips and the hotels, whatever. So just being around, eventually he gets comfortable enough. And so for me, I had a chance to interview him at All-Star in 2020, February 2020, when he won MVP after the game. And I was the first one he talked to because he recognized me. It's just that simple. It's not rocket science. You just have to take your time and don't force anything. So for him, you know, I'm not going up to him and asking him what he's having for lunch, but like when it comes down to it and when I need something and there's an opportunity for an interview, whatever it might be, he'll be cool with it because he's seen me around.
Mhm.
Now you mentioned traveling with the team, and also obviously you said that you were at the All-Star game in Atlanta. What's it like going around with the team? Obviously this season, I'm sure it was a little different with COVID, but in the year prior to that, what was it like getting to travel with the team, being around the team constantly, going on those road trips? Does it give you sort of a different perspective at the game of basketball?
Oh yeah. It's eye-opening. So it's awesome because I love being in different places and seeing different cities I'd never been to at the time and meeting up with friends that I have in cities across the country. That's awesome. Going to Toronto, awesome. So a lot of perks obviously come with that. But I think the reason it was so eye-opening, guys, and you know, it's funny because a lot of people on Twitter don't really think about this, or people who even are on TV who haven't been through it don't think about this, but it's grueling. Some of these trips are really long, and some of it is, you know, I remember we had a back-to-back at the very end. So it was a 7-game road trip, I think, my first season. The road trip started in Milwaukee. So we're in Milwaukee. Then we went from Milwaukee to Indiana, then to Toronto, then to DC. Then from DC, we went to Minnesota. And then from Minnesota, we went back to Chicago, which is right next to Milwaukee. I'm thinking, like, why in the world did we go? Essentially, it was like a star formation. So why would we do that? And then the worst part was it was a back-to-back at the end. So let's say I think it was Minnesota, and the following night we were playing in Chicago. We only had about 15 hours total in Chicago. And of course, they lose that game to the Bulls. The Bulls weren't very good 2 years ago. And everyone's saying, what's wrong with the Clippers? Well, no one slept. We didn't get in till 4 a.m, and then they had to play a game the next day. If you had to go through that and someone said to you, hey, you're going to run a 5K, but you're only going to get about 4 hours of sleep, and you're changing time zones across the way as well. How do you think you'd do? I think that's an aspect. And so I know this upcoming season, our schedule is very grueling in the sense that we've got 5 different pockets of 5 games in 7 days. I mean, these guys are just going to be tired. And so there are going to be some letdown games. And I think people overanalyze a lot of that, and they say, oh, well, this team can't do it. No, it's just they're tired, they're overworked, they're over traveled, all that stuff. And so I think a lot of it is, well, they get private jets or whatever this. It's still tough. I mean, you're not sleeping in your own bed. You sometimes waking up and not realizing what city you're in. So it can be good and bad at the same time.
As a broadcaster, how does being on the road so much impact your preparation and stuff like that?
Well, it definitely impacts the actual the art of the broadcast itself, because when you're not there, and I had to deal with this a lot over the last couple of years now, when this past year I didn't travel until the second round of the playoffs. That's when the NBA allowed us to start traveling again with the COVID stuff. And so I was doing everything out of a studio in downtown Los Angeles, and you just don't get the feel for the environment. You don't see things as they develop. You have to wait for it to happen on your screen. And I'm essentially watching it off of a computer monitor. And if they cut away, too bad. I have to stall until they cut back to play, right? So that I could be in the middle of the play saying Leonard on the right wing gives it off to George on the left side. Now they're cutting to Mookie Betts, who's at the game. I say, and Mookie Betts is here tonight. And then they cut back and there was a basket, and I don't know what happened. I don't know who scored. So that aspect can be difficult. But the thing that you're missing, the energy you can't feed off of, the environment that's around you, and things that happen on the periphery. So if there might be a miscommunication or an exchanging of words happening on a bench, you don't see it unless you're there. And so those little minuscule details start to add up over the course of a game and make a difference. As for the preparation, like I said, I go to the shoot arounds, I go to practices and stuff like that. So I get to see what they're working on, see what they're looking for in the game. And so it gives me a better idea of what I should be looking for when it does happen.
So I want to shift gears, and I want to congratulate you actually, because you just got named to the SEC on CBS team. So congratulations on that. But I mean, it's football and basketball, a different sport. So how's your preparation look like for football compared to basketball?
Garbage, straight garbage. No, it's different. I think that, as you guys will learn if you continue in the industry, is everything's a little bit different and nobody does it the same way. My dad does all of his charts, all of his boards for these games, his preparation, spotting, and all that stuff he does it by hand still, because he's a dinosaur. And I tell him, you don't have to be a T-Rex. You can form into some sort of Pokemon if you want to, or Transformer. You can join the 21st century. He refuses, because that's the way he's always done it. I do all my stuff on the computer. I was hesitant at first because I always saw him do it handwritten. I tried it one time and I was like, he's a dumbass, I don't know what else to say. So I'd say the football takes a little longer because there are more people, right? There are more players, more athletes. So you have to prepare for each one on defense and on offense. They're for an NFL team, 53 different players to prepare for. And the challenge with college especially is there are repeat numbers. Some guys wear number 4 on offense. Some guy will wear number 4 on defense. And so you got to know who's who somehow, right? So you got to watch games before and figure out how to identify each player. But the biggest thing is it really doesn't change all that much when you get down to the nitty gritty. At the end of the day, any sport, any event, anything, it comes down to storytelling. How well can you tell stories? And then for me, I like to add in the personality aspect. I like to add in the TVs, the movies, all those references, music, whatever else. My dad does that a little bit as well. I try to do it as much as I can, but I don't prepare that stuff ahead of time for the most part. If it comes to me, I let it rip, and it hasn't gotten me in trouble yet. So I'm all good.
Will you be traveling to the stadiums this year for college football, or will you be in the studio? Okay,
yes,
so the energy there is going to be incredible this season.
Insane. Yeah, insane. It should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Guys, as a Syracuse graduate, I didn't really get the college football experience there I got the basketball side of things, which was important to me, but college football at Syracuse, while my senior year was awesome, we won 10 games. It's not quite an SEC football game. So I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, nothing's like an SEC football game. It's like a religion down there.
Exactly.
Do you have a game you're looking forward to calling the most? I don't know if you got in the schedules yet or assignments.
So we have a couple of the games. I'm doing 4 games this year. So it's all part of the package. And the first game that I'm doing is in Hawaii. So I probably would hate myself if I didn't say I'm looking forward to that and being there. So I'll say that for now. Most of them are TBD. It sounds like there's a chance that we might be doing Auburn and Georgia, which would be a lot of fun.
That's pretty awesome. One game that you did last season for the NFL was the Nickelodeon game between the Saints and the Bears in the playoffs. What was it like getting to call an NFL game and sort of doing weirder type of broadcast with it being on Nickelodeon?
It was amazing. Did you guys watch it at all?
Yeah. Actually,
are you Nickelodeon fans, or were you growing up?
Yeah. Of course, I love Rugrats.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
As a kid. And I did tune in for a bit of the Nickelodeon broadcast.
Yeah. So the reason I asked you is because I was a huge Nickelodeon guy growing up. I loved
your show?
All those. Drake and Josh was my go-to. I would say I liked all those. Zoe 101, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, iCarly, all those shows, along with SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron. Before that, Rocket Power. I mean, I'm a few years older than you guys, so I go even further deeper. All that, Amanda Show, all of those. So yeah, I watched a lot of it. And Legends of the Hidden Temple, which I don't know if you guys even know what that one would be. It was a game show on Nickelodeon, on Nick Gas for when I was a kid. And so growing up, watching all those and being a fan of it, getting the opportunity to now blend, which has always been my goal, blend sports and entertainment, the two things I love more than anything, was perfect. It was like the perfect storm for me. And they paired me with Nate Burleson and then 2 Nickelodeon kids, Gabby Nevaeh Green and Lex Lumpkin, who when I first heard the name, I didn't think that was a real person. And he's real and he's spectacular. So I loved every second of it. We all kind of looked at each other beforehand and said, all right, let's just have fun and whatever. And we had no idea how successful and how well received it would become. But we just were having a blast, honestly, and just appreciated that people seemed to do the same.
Did you have to adjust your broadcasting style to fit the younger audience?
Yes and no. You just have to be conscious. They always tell you at Syracuse, Marty Glickman, who is this very famous sportscaster, Olympian, incredible career. There's a documentary about him on HBO if you ever want to check it out. And so he was one of the OG Syracuse broadcasting legends. And he always used to he would pass down his knowledge, then generation to generation. Marv Albert went to Syracuse because of him, Bob Costas, and then it went, and that's what really set off the reaction. So he was like patient X, patient 0 for the broadcasting world of Syracuse, Newhouse Mafia. And what he always used to say is you have to consider the listener. This was radio. So same for TV, consider the viewer. And I think in the back of my mind, I just always thought, all right, who is this targeted for? Let me make sure that I hit that target. And that's true for any broadcast I do. Clippers, who's this targeted for? It's Clipper fans. So let me hit that target. If I'm doing the SEC stuff, who's this targeted for? Fans of college football. Let me hit that target. If I'm doing tennis, who's this targeted for? Tennis fans. Let me hit the target. So you do have to adjust all the time, but you still want to stay true to yourself at the same time. And that, I will just say, comes with time. There's a lot of time involved with all of this, but repetitions and doing it more and more, getting the feel for what works, what doesn't, it is all part of the deal as you embark on your journey.
I mean, do you have a favorite sport to announce? Because you do tennis, basketball, football.
Well, basketball has always been my favorite sport, Curtis Blow level style. I, from a young age, loved basketball so much. I'd wake up and ask my parents to call me a certain NBA player, but I wouldn't tell them which one when I was younger. They would have to guess, and then we'd be in public and they wouldn't know, and they'd be calling me, and I'd be in aisle 4 of the supermarket and they'd be in aisle 7, and eventually they'd say, Dirk, and I'd come running. So it was, I loved basketball from a young age.
That's
I
funny.
can't even imagine running to the supermarket and your parents yelling Dirk. The other people must have been looking at them
Oh,
like,
the other people were like, "You named your son Dirk? What's wrong with you?"
So no, I gotta ask before we sort of start to wrap up, what advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters?
I would say exactly what I said before, guys, which is always be yourself and always have fun. The second you're not having fun doing what you're doing is the second that your work's going to suffer. Because when you're having fun, especially if you're on the air, that means that most people who are watching or listening are going to feel that same emotion because you're going to be conveying that emotion. And that really is what sports are all about at the end of the day. For a lot of people, it's an escape from reality. For a lot of people, it's exhilaration. And so you want to hone those emotions and then feed them back to them. You want to help create the happiness that they're looking for. And that's really why I got into both the sports and hopefully more of the entertainment, all that stuff. It's because it brings people happiness. Like I could have gotten into news, but every time I turn on the news, there's something depressing on there. And I didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted to be something that was going to put a smile on people's faces. And so I think that the biggest things I always remember are those two things. Always be yourself and always have fun. And if you want to get better, just keep doing it.
Mhm. Well, no, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. But before we let you go, I have one final question. So this question has a little twist to it. If there was a sports event that you could call, what would it be? But it can't be a championship game.
A sports event, I would say the Nathan's hot dog eating competition. Not a championship. Does that count? And
Yeah,
listen,
that counts.
That's
listen.
good. That's good.
I woke
Yeah,
up
that's a good one.
every 4th of July and said, is anybody going to beat the GOAT? And every year, no one beats him. Joey Chestnut is one of the most dominant athletes of any generation. And I don't know what happened to Kobayashi because my younger years, he was dominant as well. And they had a legit feud. But man, Chestnut has just blown him away. Then I read something recently, guys. This is what I do in my free time. I saw something on Twitter or something that eating one hot dog takes some amount of time off your life. So if
35
that's
minutes.
the case, how long was it?
I think it was 35 minutes.
35 minutes, something like that.
So how many hot dogs has Joey Chestnut engulfed over the years for this title belt? And how many years has it taken off of his life? Because I think he is a medical marvel.
And to our viewers out there, check out our podcast with Joey Chestnut too. Well, no, we want to thank you so much for coming on today, and good luck this season with college football and the Clippers, and hopefully we can do it again.
Jacob, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and enjoy Philly sports, I think, more than anything, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.